Imagine waking up one morning with your heart racing, a strange tightness pressing against your chest, or suddenly being struck by a crushing headache, your vision blurring. In that moment, your mind might flash back to the vaccine you received just a few weeks ago. Because the shot that was once hailed as humanity's greatest hope against COVID-19 has left millions asking the same haunting question: is it truly safe? The coronavirus pandemic was a turning point for the modern world. As the virus claimed millions of lives, vaccines were introduced as the only way out. Billions of doses were administered in what became the fastest vaccination campaign in history. Yet alongside the promise came a shadow: fear. Not just fear of the virus itself, but fear of the very vaccines designed to protect us. Scientists rushed to study this fear, and the picture that emerged was complicated. Vaccines were neither entirely innocent nor entirely dangerous. And it is in this gray space that the story of vaccine harms begins. The first red flag came in the form of heart inflammation in young men. Myocarditis and pericarditis, conditions that inflame the heart muscle and its lining, were repeatedly reported in otherwise healthy adolescents and young adults after receiving mRNA vaccines. The symptoms were sudden: chest pain, shortness of breath, rapid heartbeat. Data confirmed that especially in males aged 12 to 29, the risk spiked within the first week after vaccination. Statistically, about 40 out of every million young men developed this condition after a second dose. The numbers might look small, but for families whose sons were rushed to hospitals with inflamed hearts, the impact was anything but small. While most cases recovered, the shock and the loss of trust lingered. Another risk surfaced with adenoviral vector vaccines. Rare cases of blood clotting combined with low platelet counts, known as vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia, VITT, began appearing. These were not ordinary clots. They formed in unusual places like the brain's veins, the lungs, or abdominal vessels. The outcome could be fatal. Although the odds were as rare as one in hundreds of thousands, when it did occur, it destroyed lives. Several countries restricted or even halted the use of these vaccines in younger populations once the risk became undeniable. The nervous system was not immune either. Guillain-Barré syndrome, a condition where the immune system attacks peripheral nerves, was reported more frequently after some vaccines. People developed numbness, tingling, weakness, and in severe cases, paralysis. Again, the risk was tiny, but the condition was real. Even the World Health Organization acknowledged the signal and issued cautions. Transparency demanded that these rare but severe side effects be recognized. For women, menstrual irregularities became a source of concern. Countless reports described longer, heavier, or more painful periods after vaccination. Large-scale studies later showed these changes were usually temporary. On average, cycles were delayed by just a couple of days. Still, for women who experienced these shifts, the worry was very real. Nothing erodes trust in health interventions faster than changes in one's own body. Then there were allergic reactions. Severe anaphylaxis, the kind of rapid allergic shock that can turn fatal within minutes, was reported in a handful of cases. Around 5 per million doses. Rare, yes. But for the unlucky few, it was life-threatening. Perhaps the most unsettling narratives were those of sudden deaths after vaccination. Healthy athletes collapsing, young people dying unexpectedly within days of their shots. Official investigations often found no direct causal link, attributing many of these cases to coincidence. But for the public, the explanations rang hollow. When a previously healthy child or athlete dies after being vaccinated, no statistic can erase the suspicion. Trust was damaged, and once damaged, it is slow to heal. The benefits of vaccination are undeniable. COVID-19 vaccines prevented countless deaths, drastically reduced intensive care admissions, and blunted the pandemic's impact. Yet the human mind focuses more on harm than on benefit. Harm feels personal, visceral. A single child in the ICU with heart inflammation carries more emotional weight than charts showing millions of lives saved. This is the paradox. Scientifically, risks are small. Emotionally, they are enormous. Another source of anxiety is the unknown. These vaccines were developed and deployed at unprecedented speed. We do not yet know what decades-long follow-up will reveal. Questions linger in the public mind. Could there be hidden effects years down the road? Could fertility, cancer risk, or autoimmune diseases emerge later? Current evidence says no, but the uncertainty itself breeds fear. The psychological dimension cannot be ignored. In the chaos of early 2020, people lined up for vaccines out of fear and urgency. Later, as reports of side effects spread, many wondered if they had acted too quickly. Some felt like unwilling participants in a giant experiment. And when people feel like test subjects, perceived harms grow far larger in their imagination. When we step back and examine the big picture, it's clear. COVID-19 vaccines brought miracles, but not without cost. Rare yet real harms, heart inflammation, clotting disorders, nerve damage, allergic reactions, have left their mark. The numbers may be tiny on a global scale, but for individuals and families who suffered, the numbers mean nothing. To them, the harm is absolute. The truth sits between extremes. It would be false to claim vaccines were pure poison. It would be equally false to claim they were flawless. They saved millions, but they also harmed thousands. And perhaps the deepest harm was not medical at all, but psychological, a deep erosion of trust. When people feel that side effects are hidden, minimized, or dismissed, suspicion takes root. Once trust in health authorities is broken, it takes years to rebuild. This duality will define how history remembers the COVID-19 vaccine campaign. As both one of the greatest public health triumphs and one of the most controversial medical rollouts. It will be remembered as the tool that saved humanity from a deadly virus, and also as the spark that fueled distrust in medicine, governments, and global health organizations. The human stories will outlive the statistics. The teenager with myocarditis who couldn't play sports for months. The woman whose cycle shifted and who wondered if her fertility was affected. The father who died of a clot days after his jab. These stories are rare but unforgettable. And for every life saved by the vaccine, another family whispers, "But what about us?" Years from now, we may remember the COVID-19 vaccines as both salvation and shadow. They showed us science at its fastest and most powerful, but also at its most uncertain. They reminded us that the human body is delicate, that mass interventions carry unpredictable consequences, and that even miracles come with a price. And perhaps the ultimate lesson is this: science without transparency cannot earn trust. Honesty about both benefits and harms is the only way forward. Because in the end, people don't want perfection, they want the truth. And only truth can heal the wounds left behind.